Testing. 1, 2. All right, y'all. We're back on again. I just want y'all to tell me if you could hear me clearly this time. If you could hear me clearly. Just let me know if you could hear me. All right. Well, now we get to it. So we're going to talk about the Green Witch Killer. Now, the Green Witch Killer was a very, very prolific serial killer. He was born in Salt Lake City, but he resided around Washington State. Now, this gentleman, as you can see in the picture, is Gary Ridgway. He was responsible for killing over 80 prostitutes in the United States of America. To this day, the only reason why he was caught was because of DNA. Other than that, he was very clean cut. This man knew exactly what to do to evade being caught or even being suspicious. He did an excellent job at it too. He was pretty good at it. Now, the same gentleman, Gary Ridgway, is still in prison today. Now, there was a backstory behind this young gentleman. Well, he isn't young anymore. But he had a hate for women. A real strong hate towards women. And that hate stemmed from his mother. Now, these are some of the people who he killed. These are some of his victims. This was him in the King County in Washington State. And this is him as a child and as a teenager. Now, you could look at him. I know some people would say that they can see it inside of him, but you really, can you? How many human beings look exactly like Gary Ridgway that you've met before? He does not give off the typical serial killer attributes. However, he was famous for just murdering and mutilating women's bodies after having sex with them. It was said that he also would have carried his son, his child, on one of the murders. And he would also use pictures of his son to lure women in the car to make him seem like a safe guy. That's right. That same face you see right there. Use his son, a picture of his son, to lure women in his vehicle. Now we're going to take a look at his astrology chart, but I'll give you a little bit more about his biography. Now, Gary Ridgway was born February 18th, 1949 at 7 a.m. Actually, there is a movie that was named Sins of the Father, The Green Witch Killer. It's on Tubi if you want to look at it, to learn about his life. Now, he wasn't caught until the 2000s. He was not killed. He was not captured until the 2000s, believe it or not. Now, he gave stories about how his mom was very controlling and how he used to wet the bed. And when he wet the bed, even as a teenager or a child, his mom would take his penis and wash it as if he was nasty or dirty. As if he was nasty or dirty. Now, there was also something that happened to him when he was younger. They would have him, well, his bullies would have played a trick on him and would have put skeletal remains around him, I think. But that was a different story altogether. But he, personally, was very, very strange man. I'm going to share with you his chart so we can take a look at it together. Now, Gary Ridgway, if we take a look at his chart, it's a very strange guy. If you take a look at his chart, you will see that he has what I would consider a very strange chart. Now, his natal chart, you can see he was born in the 29th degree of Aquarius, which is a very critical degree. 0 degrees and 29 degrees are critical degrees. Now, this gentleman was very strange in his ways. Now, his chart, because his moon is in Scorpio, tells you that his mom had some tendencies of being controlling or manipulative. There was definitely some feeling of being controlled by his mom. As a matter of fact, he spoke about it. Said that he did not want to be controlled by any female. He also spoke about inappropriate actions that the mom would do. He didn't go into details. But he plotted on killing his mother. Never got the opportunity. Now, what he did think about was killing women that reminded him of his mom. Now, you could tell that he had a very, very negative thoughts about how women were. The reason why I say that is because he has his moon in the sign of Scorpio, which is in his fall. And it's in the 10th house, which makes it in detriment in the 10th house. The moon does not like being in the 10th house. So this is a double whammy. Not only does he have that, but he also has Pluto squaring that red line there, squaring his moon. So his moon is not only afflicted twice, but it also has a very strong aspect to Pluto. The sign that rules, the planet that rules sex, death, regeneration, criminality. That means that this gentleman, his emotional makeup was naturally geared towards criminality, especially death. Now, when you look at his Venus is actually completely opposite his Pluto. And Venus represented a man's chart, the kind of woman he's attracted to. And as you can see, there is his Venus being in Aquarius makes him a little bit of a different kind of person. There's a detachment in this relationship. But being opposite to Pluto and being square to his moon creating a what I would call a grand square, which we would have one more placement in that to make it a grand square. However, which would be right down here, but he's missing that. So these three planets have a square, an opposition to each other. It's one opposition and two squares, making it that triangle right here. You see, going here to there to there, to these very strongly placed planets. Now, Venus is not comfortable in the first house because Venus is naturally comfortable in the seventh. The opposite house that is sitting in is sitting in the first house, which is the house of Aries, and that represents some form of boredom or some form of, I would say, when it comes to relationship, sudden crushes. That's right. Venus in Aries or Venus in the first house sort of leans towards being bored in relationship if it doesn't have some form of aggression or friction. And being in the sign of Aquarius, that makes it a little different, eccentric, unique. Now, as we look at this chart, we're going to go right back to this chart. And as you look at this chart, you will see that he has a hate towards women, especially women that are sexual. That's right. The moon. And he does not like being controlled. So one of his things in this interview is he spoke about how his mom controlled him. We know this because his moon is squaring to Pluto and in the sign of Scorpio, meaning that his mom was completely controlling. Now we're going to go into how he got into being such a prolific killer. Now this man also had Mars in Pisces. All right. Mars in Pisces, his north node is in Aries. North node in Aries. Now, if you know about the north nodes, the north node tells you about what you came here to do in this lifetime. It tells you about your purpose. All right? And his north node is in Aries. That means, and in the third house, as you can see, also has Sappho conjunct his. And what it shows, Sappho represents friendship, bonding, feeling close, or to the same as others, kindred spirit, having things in common, artistic, sharps galleries. But honestly, Sappho represents like the beautiful female energy, the relationship between you and that particular person. And in the sign of Aries, which represents conflict, it represents war, some form of friction. This man came to do exactly what he came here to do. At some point, he was actually in the army. That's right. However, he went and he was known for his murderous tendencies. Now, this is the reason why Scorpio gets such a bad rap. And it's because of this. The placement of Scorpio. His moon is Scorpio. And the 10th house representing what you're going to be known for. And if you can see, based upon his moon, he will be known for killing women, or what we call women, that were in the sex industry. And what sign rules sex? Scorpio. What planet rules sex? Pluto. So these two tells you that this man would have had a very, very strong aversion to wanting to kill, if you want to use that term, these women. Now you can tell that his sex drive was a little different, unique. And let's just say it was very strange, to be honest with you. Now most people who have Aquarius on the first house has Gemini on the 5th. However, this gentleman had Uranus on his 5th house. Uranus on his 5th house. And when you look at it, Uranus in the 5th house can be a little bit different. And when I say that to say this. Uranus is the planet that rules different, eccentric, unique, but it also represents, like I say, the kooky, the wild. And this man had a very wild sexual nature. As you know, the 5th house also rules fun sex. It also rules fun sex. And this man's 5th house had Uranus there, as you can see. That means that he had a very strange sexual tendencies. Now, with his Mars being in Pisces, this also means that he felt as if he had to sacrifice to help. So he felt as if he was doing the police officers a job by taking prostitutes off the streets. He said this, that he felt as if he was doing them a favor. Now, when this man was supposed to be known for a healer, because his Chiron is conjunct his MC, and Chiron, well, to be honest with you, Chiron is the natural ruler of Virgo, and he has Virgo on his 8th house of death, sex, regeneration. So with the ruler of his 8th house being conjunct his MC, he could have gone in many different ways. He could have gone into the depth of spirituality. He could have gone into other criminalities. He could have gone into sex. He could have been an undertaker. He could have done all these things, but he chose to be a participant in the physical killing of women. Now, believe it or not, this same chart here tells me that he was saved, because now he was sentenced. He was going to be sentenced to be killed. I think it was the gas chamber, to be electrocuted. He was sentenced to death. He was going to. However, because they pleaded with him to give the bodies of the other women, he did. And now the Saturn in the 8th house, which is an indicator of somebody who will live a long life, showed that that is what happened. He is still alive today in prison. Now, if this Saturn wasn't in the 8th house, this gentleman would be dead after all of that killing. But this Saturn, which actually is the restrictor, restricts death from him. So he lives to see another day because of the same placement right here. Most people have Saturn in the 8th house live a very long time. So if you have Saturn in your 8th house, unless there's an affliction to your Saturn, this is an indicator of somebody who could live a very long life. Now, going back to his chart, his Chiron is conjunct his MC. This gentleman could have been a healer, somebody who could have been a philosopher, teacher, but he chose the wrong path. With Mars, which represents the sex drive in Pisces, that means that this man had some very, very strong desires, strong sexual fantasies. And as you can see, his dark moon Lilith is conjunct his Mars. Now, you know, dark moon Lilith is the side of you that we call, the part of you that's hidden, that shadow side of you. And when you look at his dark moon Lilith, and his dark moon Lilith being conjunct his Mars, which represents aggression, this man had an addiction to afflictions and sex and death. He literally was addicted to killing, to hurting women. Literally. Now his dark moon Lilith was also conjunct his sun. Oh yes, because see, he has 29 degrees Aquarius, and his dark moon Lilith, which represents that dark, very witchy, mystical side, is conjunct his sun. So deep down on the inside, he had these really dark, twisted fantasies. Right? Very twisted, dark fantasies, which he lived out. It's very hard, and rough to look at this chart and say, wow, the man was literally born to be a killer. When you look at these, what we would call Arabian parts, the AP represents Arabian parts, perversion, violence, murder, all in the sign of Libra, which naturally rules the other half, partners, for him, because his perversion is conjunct widely his Neptune. This man had a perversion of violence and murder, as you can see, is literally sitting here in his chart. Now Libra is a sign that rules beauty and fashion and all the other stuff. But this is also what he felt towards his mom. He felt as if his mom was perverted and he wanted to kill her. He wanted violence against her because she didn't just watch it. She actually had violence toward him. He wanted to kill her really, really bad. He spoke of this. What made him a serial killer was the connection of these and these. The Mars and Pisces can be addicted to certain things. They're very susceptible to being addicted to something. And the fact that his Mars is the ruler of his North Node and conjunct Sappho tells me that he was addicted to hurting women and having sex with them. This man was a very, very strange guy. But yes, when looking at this man, he looks like a regular dude. We would judge from the outside saying that this person was wicked and evil. But when you think about it carefully. And I don't want you to take what I say the wrong way, but when I look at his chart literally tells me that these women were past life marriage partners of his. You would say, well, Astro, why would you say that? But I want you to understand it right now. So his South Node is in Libra. And that means that, he came from previous lifetimes, or he accumulative of being compromising in relationships. Being all compromising and, losing himself in marriages or relationships. Now, it is said that Libra is ruled by Venus, but actually, my study has shown it is actually ruled by Juno, this planet, this asteroid right here. Now, when I look at the house it's sitting in, the fourth house, which represents endings, represent the ending of life. But I also know that all the water houses are houses that are connected to past lives. There's a strong possibility that most of these women that he killed in previous lifetimes were either lovers of his or women who he desired and rejected him. Women who he desired and rejected him. You're like, well, how would you say that? Why would you say that, Astro? And that's because this sign here is Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. And his Venus is in Aquarius, which represents different, eccentric, unique, also aloof. Now his soul, his ego may not remember, but his soul does. And sometimes that can be imprinted, embedded. So what you may think is a very random act was actually something that was designed before he came into this life. Looking at his chart, this gentleman right here was only acting out of impulse. And for some apparent reason, he had no idea. He assumed it was because of the hate for his mom. That might have sparked the few. But it's also shown that this gentleman, which had the same placements as perversion, violence, and murder, was only filling out a past life karmic tie. But he did it in a very, very terrible way. By killing all of the women that he came in contact with. That was rough. I don't know about y'all, but that's pretty rough. That is rough. So you can see how his killer instincts was literally set in stone in his chart. There could have been some higher octave that he could have taken, if you want to use that term, where he would have liberated them from a different perspective. But who knows what the higher self chooses? We only speculate from our moralistic perspective because that's what we were taught. But who knows what his higher self, what contracts he made with those particular women. It sounds crazy. I know. But sometimes the truth is much stranger than fiction. I want to thank you all for just keeping up with me tonight for this very, very edition of Astrology of a Serial Killer. All right, y'all. Until tomorrow, have a wonderful night.